No chart, not right now.
All right, good morning, everyone. We're really glad to start day 2 of Futureproof IT. Again, this is a first of its kind virtual summit bringing together global tech leadership to address operational security and financial impacts of COVID-19 to the business IT operations environment. Again, we have a wonderful website up at futureproofit.org that'll tell you all about our schedule today, including speaker bios, headshots, all of those wonderful things that'll kind of give you the calendar lay for the day. Here we've had some wonderful organizers. It's been a real thrill to work with Johan from Abelioni, Chad and Becky from Electrona, and I'm bringing up the rear here with Technolutionary. I'm here for the pretty, and I have to say they're both doing a better job than me in this regard. I definitely have a face for radio, but it's been a real thrill to work with them as we start to put things together. But the people that I'm really thrilled to be representing today are all of our awesome sponsors. Growth Technologies, Simple Thread, Autonomy Co-op, The New IT, and PC Medics. Without them, there's no way that, we really start to, build that critical mass. Thank you so much to all of them for their support. It's been incredible as we went out to talk to people, say, hey, we're trying something new. And it's always a risk when you're trying something new. And everybody we talked to just said, well, yeah, let's do this. So thanks very much to Grove, Simple Thread, Autonomy, The New IT, and PC Medics. We're up to $5,193 that has been raised for Heart to Heart International. That's up over $250 more than when we started, which is awesome, which means we're still gaining people. So if this is your first day at Futureproof, we're really thrilled you're here. Again, all proceeds from this conference go to Heart International to support their humanitarian work distributing urgently needed equipment and medication for COVID-19 around the world. Up next this morning, we'll be talking with Kingsley. He's the IT manager of MedinCell in France, and we'll be talking a little bit more about on-prem modern IT and budgeting for those kind of things. That's one of those topics that nobody's really been talking about lately. Has been, oh crap, how do we pay for all of this? How do we change out our environment? It's been a real thrill to talk with Kyle as we go into this. Just on a personal note, it's really awesome to see everybody turn out for this great event, especially given work schedules, especially given the early hour on the Pacific Coast, especially given the late afternoon hour in Europe. It's been really awesome to have a fully global event like this. Where we're spanning multiple continents. I think we're up to, yesterday we had 9 time zones represented from Australia on the far end all the way to the Pacific Coast. So it was a real thrill to see folks from all over, especially when we don't get to see each other all that much, especially not this year. So our schedule today, we got Kyle coming up right next. In the second session block, Terry Grosheim will be talking about compliance in the era of remote work. Jan Quentrick will be talking about preclinical and clinical research operations in a COVID-19 environment from Iris Pharma. We'll have a security panel at 11 o'clock, and I guess that's, 5 p.m. in the UK, 1700 in Europe. With Rob Pegararo, tech journalist whose imprint is at USA Today and others. We'll have Amelie Karan from Splunk, Shrav Mehta from SecureFrame, and Yael Grauer from Independent Tech Journalists. And then in the last session of the day, we'll have Scott Ford from Corgi Bytes talking about mending code and code for the new environment of remote operations. And then Shrav Mehta will rejoin us to talk about collecting audit evidence during this environment. So we're really excited to have a wonderful day here. It's about 5 past the hour. And Kyle, are you cool just starting a little bit early this morning?
No problem at all.
So wonderful. And Kyle, I'll turn it right over to you. Folks, in the Slack, we've got the welcome channel, which is where we're putting up session links if you haven't already joined them. If you haven't found the Slack, please feel free to drop us an email. We will make sure that you get another invite. We'll roll on this morning. So really looking forward to the second day of Futureproof IT. Thanks, Kyle.
Hi, everyone. Great. Just going to share my screen with you all. Perfect. So thank you all for your time and generosity in supporting the fight against COVID-19. I'd like to really thank the Futureproof IT team for organizing this conference and giving me the opportunity to present this topic today. The topic, modern IT infrastructure on-premise, and how that has benefited us during this pandemic. My name is Kyle Kingsley. I'm the IT manager at MedinCell, a pharmaceutical company in the south of France. I like to consider myself a techie adventurer, as I'm obsessed with traveling, trying new things, and learning new cultures, which is extremely difficult right now. I miss traveling as well. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan, where I began my IT career, hence not having a French accent yet. Fun facts, Detroit is known as the Motor City. It's where the first mile of pavement was laid, and the first city to build a traffic tunnel between two nations, in which Detroiters have to drive south to get to Canada, as it's the only American city north of Canada. Then I moved to California, the great state, lived in San Francisco. Of course, you all know it's the birthplace of the internet and the birthplace of this lovely Windows XP background. In San Francisco, I became an IT consultant for the well-known company Lindy Group. Even though I truly loved my time in California, I only lasted about 2 years. I started traveling around and traveling abroad, and it changed everything. It changed me. I found an IT role in the south of France, immediately expressed my interest and sent my resume. Several months later, I was moving to Montpellier, France. So the move to France, as you can imagine, was not an easy one. I did not speak French. I did not know a single person in the country. And I left the hottest tech market in the world for a small foreign city with a strange culture. But I must pause and say thank you to Johan, one of the founders, for advising MedinCell to hire this American over 3 years ago. Now here I am presenting to all of you. I wonder if it's just because our company pays Johan a lot of money. No. It's because of the success we've had at MedinCell in solidifying our on-premise infrastructure while most other companies are joining the cloud movement. So enough about me. Here's what else we're going to cover today. I'll briefly talk about MedinCell and our mission, discuss on-prem versus cloud and our own conclusion. We'll dive into our budgeting, some recent investments we've made, and some tips on budgeting for such an infrastructure. Then I'll describe what I consider to be the pros and cons of our infrastructure and wrap up with how it has supported us during the pandemic. And finally, I'll open the door for questions, time permitting. So who are we? Based in Montpellier with roughly 140 employees representing over 25 different nationalities, MedinCell is a clinical stage pharmaceutical company that develops a portfolio of long-acting injectables medicines. Our BEPO technology makes it possible to control and guarantee the regular delivery of a drug at the optimal therapeutic dose for several days, weeks, or months. Our mission, better medicine for all, and to have fun. Really, it's a great place to work. It's full of amazingly intelligent people. And although we are for profit, we also have a humanitarian mission, and that makes me so proud to work there. So let's dive into the technical stuff. Let me just preface by saying, I don't think every company can be on-prem, nor can every company be in the cloud. It truly is a question each company must assess individually. With that being said, we have seen a massive growth in cloud computing, mostly because of its flexibility, scalability, cost and time savings, as well as the ease of deployment. On the other hand, on-premise infrastructures can be extremely secure, reliable, and allow the company to maintain a level of control that the cloud often cannot or comes with extra complications. The clear downside of on-premise infrastructure is that the investment costs associated with managing and maintaining all the solutions involved can run exponentially higher than a cloud infrastructure. An on-premise setup requires in-house server hardware, software licenses, support contracts, integration capabilities, and IT employees on hand to support and manage the infrastructure. Of course, we can't forget to mention the amount of time and money required when something goes wrong and breaks. It's a massive responsibility to have all of that control in the company's hands. At MedinCell, we have a mixed environment. I would estimate only 25% of our infrastructure is cloud-based. If we apply a sliding scale to our infrastructure, we are just 1/4 away from being completely on-premise. Email, SharePoint to Online, some financial services, and video conferencing are the largest cloud solutions we have. The remaining, sharing server, internal chat, lab software, the backup solution, MDM, domain controllers, et cetera, all of that are configured and deployed on our internal servers, either on-site at our office or off-site at our data center. This gives us the most control and stability, but also the biggest headache. I'll be the first to admit that it is not easy managing such an infrastructure. You need money, people, and time to ensure it's operational and stable 100% of the time. On top of that, you must ensure that your company is compliant and matches the industry standards. What do I mean by compliant? Well, it encompasses many different topics that restrict our technical choices. Working in the pharmaceutical industry means it's a legal requirement for us to be compliant. There are countless standards, regulations, policies, requirements, and laws that regulate our choices for software, services, data solutions, and their location. At MedinCell, IT works closely with the quality, legal, and risk management departments to ensure we are compliant to those laws and regulations. Security of the infrastructure goes hand in hand with compliance, as the regulations often determine the necessary level of security. As an example, we classify some of our data as confidential or non-confidential. This classification determines where the data can be stored and how it can be sent or communicated. Therefore, we put in place multiple tools with clear definition of its intended use, whether that's internal, external, confidential, non-confidential. We also have auditors come to check that different departments of MedinCell are compliant. IT is always questioned and must provide proof for our answers. We must document our infrastructure, policies, and procedures explicitly and ensure that it performs as expected. An example could be our on-premise backup solution, that we can restore a random document upon request. Another example could be account permissions, verifying a user only has access to what they should. To ensure positive results of these audits, we have put in place measures with the quality and risk management departments to regularly test ourselves. as security and confidentiality are our highest priorities. They are the first aspects considered when reviewing existing and potential new solutions. When new software or services are requested, we perform an IT review that verifies the security, data center locations, technical operations, and perform a cost-time comparison of the on-prem versus cloud solution. Regarding stability and control, I feel with proper configurations, an on-premise infrastructure provides more stability and more control than the cloud. Having a stable infrastructure means continuous connection, consistent performance, and very few service disruptions. Having control means you know exactly where your data is stored and how it moves. Knowing those provides extra comfort and trust within the company and its partners. So in the past, we've stabilized our infrastructure by investing in 2 direct fiber lines from 2 different ISPs. We configured an automatic switch to take place if one line is cut or unstable, and put in place redundant firewall, VPN, and routers to ensure there is no downtime in the event of hardware failure. And then we've configured redundant backups with copies saved at multiple locations. It's not cheap, but it's worth it. Talking about the time and cost, it's extremely important to evaluate the time and cost for each potential project and compare the figures of all the options. For example, when considering whether to have Exchange online or on-premise, we must evaluate not only the cost of the materials to host the server and store the data, but the cost and time it will take to implement the project, perform the migration, and maintain the service continuously. We're talking about man hours. Once you have those figures, you can then compare it to the risk involved with not bringing a service on-premise in order to save on the time and cost. It's true, on-premise requires larger upfront capital investment, but in the long term, it can equalize and even save on operating expense, especially if your cloud environment requires a lot of heavy data transfers. Some cloud solutions can charge extra fees for moving those large amounts of data. We, the IT, are solely responsible to evaluate our necessity to grow and scale our infrastructure. We should have visibility on the usage of our services and be able to determine the next required project. Yet, due to financial limitations, we must prioritize appropriately and deploy intelligently. Our goal should be to allow organic growth of the on-prem capabilities in order to handle the increasing need of performance, security, and confidentiality. A prime example of this is our on-premise sharing server and our instance of SharePoint Online with Microsoft. Before we migrated to Microsoft 365, we were only using internal Windows file sharing and email. However, sharing files securely and confidentially was a problem. Now we use SharePoint Online, which allows us to control access with external guests, and we've deployed digital certificates for our email to allow digital signatures and encryption. Of course, we are still not satisfied with our level of control with the SharePoint Online and are planning to bring it in-house. This is a large and expensive project that requires the need to grow organically to provide justification for the costs and time required for the project. As more of our teams are using SharePoint Online, the need to have more control will rise and add weight to the justification to bring it on-premise. So I know I just talked a lot. We've covered quite a few important subjects, but there's still one more, probably the most important, because without it, we wouldn't make any progress, and that's people. If you recall my intro, feels like ages ago already, I moved from Michigan to California to France. You may have asked, Why did a company in France hire an American? Not only that, we just hired an Australian. It's not only because we love being international, and we do feel it adds value to our culture. I believe it's actually because the right people for the job are not always the people directly in front of you. You may need to search far and wide to find the right person to fill the role you have open. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being a little picky, right? We have so many requirements that go beyond the technical needs. Their character, work ethic, and interpersonal skills must match the team and company. If not, productivity and efficiency could be negatively affected. It's also a fact that the demand for IT candidates is at an all-time high. In the end, it proves to be extremely difficult and expensive to recruit the right people to do the job. So what can you do while you're searching for the right person or people? Use consultants and contractors. Non-FTEs provide extra flexibility and freedom for your company to add and subtract the expertise when it's needed, without the commitment. I believe we all have experience and connections with consultants, as this whole virtual summit was organized by 3 of them. I'm sure their knowledge and expertise has helped most of us advance our companies again and again. As a consultant in the Bay Area of California, I was often well integrated into a company's IT team. Although I was not an internal employee, I was still trusted, respected, and included as if I was. But the company had the benefit of bringing me in only when they needed me. Last year, with the help of our consultant, our very own Johan, we completed our co-location data center project. A co-location data center is when you rent private server racks or bays from a public data center. Why might you do this? Well, you don't have to worry about the expenses of cooling or power or protecting the data center. And if you need to expand or scale, it simply requires renting another rack. More importantly, the data center is built to protect itself and the contents inside from natural disasters. We're talking fires, floods, storms, and earthquakes. The data center where we rent our server rack is built to withstand these disasters and protect the valuable equipment and, more importantly, the data inside. To clarify, we own all of the hardware installed in our rented rack, and we have private routing with virtual private LAN service, so there's no other traffic besides us. Just gonna make sure everything's okay here. So we are not limited or charged by the amount of data we download or upload, but our own bandwidth, which we can pay extra for to increase for a short period of time. So what did we achieve with the data center? I added some numbers to show the increase in both the budget and server capacity. The CPU and memory increases have opened the door for vast performance improvements for our internal servers, which results in happier colleagues. The data center has now set us up to be able to grow and scale very easily with little extra capital investment in the future. I just want to mention the increase in expenses does not include man hours, salary, etc. So something interesting about our data center, it allowed us to further stabilize our infrastructure by using 2 BGP, border gateway protocols, peering links, and 2 VPLS, virtual private LAN service domains provided by 2 different ISPs. This ensures reliability. We required 2 paths between each location. For example, building 2 can connect to the DC and the internet through building 1 and vice versa. Redundant connections increasing the reliability. So this may seem overwhelmingly expensive, but I once heard someone say, there are no big prices, just big goals. Be prepared to justify all of the costs because we know the IT budget is every CFO's nightmare. There are several categories you must foresee with the mostly on-premise infrastructure. And you must always be prepared for the unexpected other. Typically, all of these are maintained year after year, and you should be provided with an estimate from your finance department. Then you'll need to take your experience and the upcoming projects along with potential obstacles to provide an accurate projection of the approaching year's budget. For us at MedinCell, I would say our largest recurring costs, licenses, maintenance, and support. The runner-up would be telecom, as we provide phones and data plans for all of our employees because we don't use desk phones. And that has really benefited us during the pandemic. You'll notice I haven't included recruiting or employee salaries because that's a separate HR budget. So I'm sure we've all had a situation or a moment and struggled to convince our executives that the thing we drastically need is worth the cost. You probably know that there is an art to tech-splaining, copyright, Kyle Kingsley, May 2020. Tech-splaining to our executive that the necessities of an additional service or upgrading of an existing service, you know, it can really be a challenge. For us, with security and confidentiality being our priorities, it gives us an extremely strong argument for an increased budget. The conversation usually goes like this. Boss, there's a need for this tool. It provides this solution for these problems, and the cost is this. That's too much. I understand, it's expensive. Here's another solution. It saves us this much money and time, but it's cloud-based. The data would be stored outside of our company and maintained and controlled, outside of our country and maintained and controlled by another company. This second option is usually not acceptable due to our policies, depending on the data. So we either go back to the drawing board or we move forward with the initial option. Thankfully, we have an executive team and a board of directors that value information security. So now you have an overview of our modern IT environment. I'll briefly share my thoughts on the pros and cons for us. I've already expressed a few things I find beneficial or even a nuisance regarding managing an on-prem infrastructure. To recap, it's expensive. It's a huge responsibility, and often it requires outside knowledge and help to manage properly. However, the control is empowering. The security and stability is easing, and the complexity is interesting. So we're quite proud of our infrastructure, and it will continue to grow organically and continue to benefit our company. But we're all here because a coronavirus that was predicted by many became a world pandemic. We've all been affected, and I truly hope that you and your families are safe, well, and sane. I'm quite thankful to be where I am and to work for this company during this unprecedented time. We have started our own COVID research at MedinCell to try to create a medicine that will help protect humans from the virus. Not a vaccine, but a preventative. Feel free to check out our website, medincell.com, and the news releases regarding the research. So for MedinCell, we began transitioning to home office just before France began quarantine. 140 employees transitioning to home didn't require any extra installations or configurations, no extra work for IT or the support team. all of our devices are mobile, Macs and iPhones, and managed by an MDM, accessible via WAN. Like I mentioned, we have phones with data plans. So even if an employee has poor internet at home, they were either able to tether and connect through our VPN, which had enough licenses and CPU for all employees to connect simultaneously. Our support team adapted to remote support via video conferencing and remote control. And we've adapted our onboarding to become a white glove service with a walkthrough guide and training, and then being available for remote support. Our company took initiative and decided to deliver accessories, screens, mice, keyboard, and desk chairs to provide a quality working station for those that don't have it. And recently, France began deconfinement, companies began to reopen, but MedinCell is remaining mostly at home office, besides the required essential lab scientists to continue the research. So on the 18th, we've deployed a booking tool, fairly basic, but that limits the number of people on site through the tool. In the big picture, this crisis has shown us that the higher cost and complexity of our on-premise infrastructure is completely worth it. I want to thank everyone again. I didn't say good morning or good afternoon, but thank you for taking the time to be with us and your generosity and contributing to the fight against COVID. Please feel free to ask any questions and I'll answer them if I can, and share the slides at the end. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Kyle. We're definitely taking questions for the session. I actually had one to start, if that's okay. If I can jump in and ask one real quick.
Yes, please.
For your environment, with on-prem requirements, you guys had to have some serious VPN infrastructure. Can you talk a little bit about what you chose there and why you chose it?
As far as hardware is concerned, or
hardware, software, all of the above.
Well, I can't go too far into detail. My my communication team was already a bit worried about confidentiality, but what I can say is, we're using Cisco ASA, and that is all equipped at the data center. And yeah, to be honest, the CPU is really outstanding. It's performing really well, but that credit will go to Johan. So Johan has helped us design an incredible infrastructure here, and yeah.
Very cool. Being in the environment that you are, it's definitely a huge privacy, internal privacy need, to make sure that what stays private needs to stay private. And that had to be a huge challenge for you guys, is knowing that you have this huge weight on the scales that kind of tips you toward on-prem or private data center. That actually really kind of pushes the scale down for you at that point.
It does. Yeah.
So one of our attendees has a really good question. For your business, how important is nationalization of the data? I mean, you're located in France, you have data, you're part of the EU. How much of that affected your emphasis towards on-prem and data center?
It's a huge factor, actually. So I mentioned when we perform reviews of potential new software, whether that is in cloud, we always prioritize the EU. We are actually wary of storing data in the US, as the EU regulations are a bit more strict and a bit more private than the US, and that provides us with a bit more comfort if we decide to use some sort of cloud solution. So, for example, with Microsoft and our video conferencing solution, we have chosen the EU regions as the location for our data and nowhere else. So it plays a huge role for us.
And, as you guys go through that process of weighing new vendors, how much of that is like the first thing you look at versus anything else?
It pretty much is the first thing we look at. So when somebody expresses a need for something or even comes to us with a potential tool or solution, we immediately start asking those questions. And if the person who is asking or presenting the solution doesn't have the answer, we say, well, this has to be answered first before we move forward. And one of the major questions is what data is going to be used or stored, because if it's non-confidential, it's okay. It's not a problem for us to use cloud. It's more of if there's going to be any confidential information, transferring through this solution, traveling through it, then we need it to be much, much more secure.
Very cool. We have another question for the audience. How often were people working from home previously before this crisis?
Great question. We do have a working from home policy that is available. It really depends on the role of the person and their manager and their needs. So thankfully, our culture is very open for that. So the reason that it was so easy for us to just transfer 140 people to home was because it was already very common for myself, for example, was once or twice a week, I would just work from home to be able to concentrate, not have the distractions, the temptation to socialize, etc. And some people are every week because they have their children, and it's completely accepted. It's a very flexible environment.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to ask you an opinion question here, just kind of broadly thinking. And this is something that we've been talking with a lot of our clients about. We had a client yesterday announce that that you don't have to go back to the office before June 1, 2021. So not even just like 2 weeks from now, but 54 weeks from now, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess the question is at that point, do you see that work from home, do you think that work from home percentage is going to go drastically up for your organization, partially up for your organization? How do you think that's going to shake out for your org?
I foresee it increasing drastically, depending on the teams. So our business development, our marketing, some of our finance teams will not have the necessity to be in the office. So why do it? And now we are considering, okay, we have an open space floor plan. We can no longer, especially this year, fit everyone back into that same floor plan safely. With this COVID-19 in mind, we need to space it out. We need to have more distance and protect the employees. So I'm assuming that there are going to be departments that are actually required to just work from home. But at the same time, most people see a benefit of coming to the office. So I think that we're going to use this booking tool that we put in place temporarily as a way to say, okay, this department's going to be on site for this part of the week, and this department's going to be on site for the other part of the week. And there's going to be a shared location in the building, and then it's going to be cleaned. And then the new, this is just a guess here, but I foresee something like this happening.
Mm-hmm. And yesterday in the post-conference chat, this was a big discussion, and there was discussion of the Envoy beta and some other tools, Density.io, and things along those lines. When you started to look at this challenge, did you spend some time looking for specifically a tool like this, or was this something that management said, okay, we need a better way to do this?
It was management who requested some sort of scheduling tool to help, because our main restriction is the laboratory. Okay, so we have all of these lab scientists, we have all of these projects ongoing, but we cannot have them all come back into the laboratory in this shared workspace as they were before. So they need to be able to get in there maybe every day, but half the amount of people. So this request came from them, and I began searching for some tools, but at the same time, I was a bit in a rush and trying not to spend money. And actually, the simple tool of Microsoft Bookings, I've adapted that to just make it a limited number of people able to book certain shifts for the lab or the office. And if we need that to become more complex, we'll have to search for another tool. But when I heard of Density yesterday, I thought I could pair that with the tool, and in combination, we'll be able to know who is on site and that the building is actually limited to the amount of people that it's supposed to be.
That's awesome. I mean, especially when you think about the potential risks of being, too high density right now. And that's, certainly something that we've, had conversations with most of our clients about, is like, hey, what are you thinking about when it comes time to come back to the office?
Yeah.
Is this something that you want as part of your solution set? And it's been funny because a lot of orgs have been like, oh man, I think we really need that. Other organizations are like, oh, please, I really don't want to need that.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about.
Oh, go ahead.
I was thinking about the IT support aspect of this, because that should also change in theory. Us IT guys and women, we're used to just jumping on somebody else's laptop and fixing their problem in a matter of seconds. That shouldn't happen now. We shouldn't be touching other people's devices during this period, especially. And I'm telling my team, listen, you're going to stay remote IT support as long as we possibly can. And if there's an issue, somebody's walking up to your desk, you got to remind them, I need you to stay a meter away. And okay, here's how you can fix it. Just giving them directions, letting them drive, or even though they're right next to you, remote into their computer and fix it remotely, even though they're just a meter away.
Yeah. And this was something that, has been a huge priority for us, generally speaking, before this, is that we want to use, we want to make the user more comfortable. We want to make our colleague more comfortable. And it's like, hey, we're teammates. You're asking me how to do something. You're actually going to learn to do this by doing it.
Yes, exactly.
And that's been a big part of our support mantra for a long time, is that, we would rather talk you through the process and have you push the buttons, because you derive learning from that process. Yeah. Kinesthetic learning is a real thing. That is a part of reality. Yes. And so driving that interface is certainly clutch.
Yeah. So it helps, it kind of forces it to happen now.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. And so instead of, taking the shortcut, and sometimes you're going to have to take the shortcut. Sometimes nobody's getting through, they're having a bad day, you're having a bad day. And it's just not working, right? There's always the point at which you really can say, hey, can we do a screen share and I can take control and show you? But it's nice to actually have them participate in their own rescue, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Do we have any other questions from the audience at this point? Well, awesome. We've got about a 15-minute break now. It's 9:45, 3:45, 15:45. I'm going to get all the times down. 6:45 in the morning for our Pacific friends. You're up early. Good job. I was going to say we're going to take a 15-minute spot now. Refresh your beverages, grab a snack, and we'll be back in about 15 minutes. With Terry Grossheim was up first. Here, let me pop my screen up with the slide and share the thing. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Helps if I remember to hit share screen first, doesn't it? All right. Cool. Hey, Johan, can you turn off the spotlight video? Hey, there we go. So at this point, we should see who's up next. That's Terry Grossheim talking about compliance in the era of remote work, followed by Jan Quentrick talking about preclinical and clinical research operations under a COVID-19 environment. And thanks, everybody. We'll see you in 15.